Hello everyone, my name is Yasuhiko Yamazaki. I am a Japanseizi independent journalist based on internet media. I am also a political and social activist. I am broadcasting every day in Japanese YYNews Live, except Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. in local time for more than 8 years. Approximately 500 persons are watching every time. I started English-Japanese broadcast bi-weekly on Wednesday night from the 7th 2015 in order to talk directly to 1.4 billions of English speakers around the world to let them know the hidden and unknown truths on Japan and the world. Please find hereafter the English vlog based on the scenario of English Japanseizi broadcast made yesterday on the 21st of October 2020. English vlog No. 3510 The MMT, modern monetary theory, advocated by Professor Kelton is the fact theory, hiding the current situations and the plot theory of economics designed by the Rothschild International Financial Mafia. An article by Professor Stephanie Kelton, Faculty of Economics of the University of New York State, an advocate of MMT, was published in the Toyo Keizai Online dated on the 19th of October 2020. So I proved below that the MMT is a complete bogus theory. Professor Kelton's main claims: 1. Japan must completely abandon its obsession with reducing the budget deficit to escape the corona shock. 2. The Bank of Japan should create money to stimulate the economy. 3. The government budget deficit is the only way out of the crisis. 4. The new administration of Japan must completely abandon its obsession with reducing the budget deficit. 5. It is not important for Japan whether the government budget is in the red or in the black. What is important is whether the budget is used to achieve a balanced and equitable economy for the people. My criticism: the following two preconditions that Professor Kelton presupposes in the MMT are completely wrong. The first precondition: the government's aggressive fiscal stimulus realizes a balanced and equitable economy for the people. First of all, from the conclusion, the government's aggressive fiscal stimulus is not for the people, nor for the realization of a balanced and equitable economy. It is for paying a huge interest to the private banks. This is because the government's aggressive fiscal stimulus for the countermeasures against corona pandemic is covered by a government bond issuance, and it has been decided from the beginning that the government bonds would be entirely undertaken by the private banks. In other words, it has been decided from the beginning that the entire amount of the government's countermeasures against corona pandemic would be borrowed from the private banks by paying a huge amount of interest to the private bank. Furthermore, for the redemption of the government bonds issued by the government issues every year a new government bond called refinancing bond and pays the principal of the government bonds to the banks by having the banks undertake. Professor Kelton intentionally hides these current conditions. Knowing these current conditions, the premise of Professor Kelton's MMT theory, saying that the government fiscal mobilization has realized a balanced and equitable economy for the people, becomes total trick. Second precondition: the Bank of Japan's money creation realizes a balanced and equitable economy for the people. First of all, from the conclusion, the Bank of Japan's money creation for the countermeasures against corona pandemic was neither for the people nor for the realization of a balanced and equitable economy. It was done to provide a huge amount of money for the private banks. This is because the huge amount of money that the Bank of Japan has created for the countermeasures against corona pandemic would not be supplied directly by the Bank of Japan to the individuals, the companies, the local governments, and the central government hit directly by the corona pandemic. This is because it has been decided from the beginning that the huge amount of money created by the Bank of Japan would always be supplied to the private banks and to the government-affiliated banks. In other words, the right to decide the supply destination of the huge amount of money that the Bank of Japan has created for the countermeasures against corona pandemic is held by the private banks, and the government-affiliated banks instead of the Bank of Japan and the government. In other words, most of the huge amount of money that the Bank of Japan has created for the countermeasures against corona pandemic was not supplied to the individuals, the companies, the local governments and the central governments suffering from the corona pandemic. These funds were supplied preferentially to the financial economy controlled by the Rothschild International Financial Mafia. What happened as a result? While the corona pandemic destroyed the real economy around the world and the lives of the ordinary people, the financial bubble has occurred on a large scale in the developed countries, and 280,000 ultra-rich people around have newly increased their assets of 700 trillions of yen in the past 5 months. 8 facts that Professor Kelton never says in the MMT. 1. There are 2 types of economies in opposition to each other in each country of the world. One is the real economy, which is the people's life itself and the economy that creates the values, and the other is the financial economy, which is the gambling economy that produces no value just by buying and selling the financial products. 2. The society in which we currently live is the super-financial capitalist society. The super-financial capitalist society is a society in which the financial economy that has swelled several tens of times larger than the real economy by destroying the real economy. 3. The U.S. Central Bank, FRB, Federal Reserve Board, is a completely private bank in which the U.S. government does not own any shares on. The Rothschild banks own 100% of the shares. 4. Japan's Bank of Japan, EU's ECB, European Central Bank, UK's England Bank, and the central banks of European countries and BIS Bank of International Settlement. The central bank of the central banks around the world are virtually controlled by the Rothschild International Financial Mafia. 5. The government of each country issues every year a large amount of the government bonds to secure the financial resources by having the private banks undertake all of them, and pays huge amount of the interest to them for the debt from the private banks. 6. The financial resources for the principal redemption of the government bonds issued by the government are the debt borrowed from the private banks by having the private bank undertake and paying the interests. 7. The central bank of each country purchases the government bonds undertaken by the private banks and supplement the government bond purchase funds equals the government loan funds. 8. The total balance of the government bonds issued by the government and the total amount of the government bonds purchased by the central bank from the private banks are all passed on to the people as the national debt. My conclusion: Professor Kelton's MMT, Modern Monetary Theory, is a plot economics designed by the Rothschild International Financial Mafia in order to make execute by the government and the central bank of each country of the world unlimitedly, the government fiscal mobilization and the central bank monetary creation, and to make invest most of the money in the financial economy. End.